Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Bannister. This is the weekly meeting of SIG Docs for Kubernetes. It is Tuesday, the 15th of September. Have we got any new contributors today? Or indeed people who are returning and haven't been joining in a while and would like a welcome back?
It's been a while since I've been here. My 2-year-old finally is napping on the time I want him to go to sleep. So,
cool. Welcome back, Adam. Do you want to give you a brief introduction to who you are and why you want this job?
So I'm a software engineer at Red Hat. I've been contributing to Docs on and off, and also been looking to incorporate the lessons that Docs has been learning into some of my own projects, including this new project Shipwright that we just had our first release on last week. Very alpha, cool. But.
Okay, housekeeping updates and reminders. This week's pull request wrangler is Qiming, not appearing in this movie, but no worries. And Qiming will be wrangling and has been wrangling already. Next week is Vineeth. If you're an approver, make sure you know your scheduled PR wrangler shifts. Let's move on to the agenda. Hello, Lorenzo. Agenda. Let's talk about SIG release. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you. So release started yesterday. I'm currently in process of going over the shadow applications. So shadows are not, they haven't been decided yet. I did make a pull request today, which is written here. So I know RV gave me a looks good to me label, but I actually need an approval. So if anyone can approve that, that would be really helpful. And another thing, actually Celeste brought it up in the SIG release channel. It's about all the channels that we have for communication. And I think it's actually a really good idea to combine those. So I'm talking about, there's one for release docs that was created last release, but it was never used. And then there's one called SIG Docs Release channel, which have been used by the SIG Docs group and the release team for a while now. And I actually looked up if it's documented anywhere, and that channel, it is documented in the documents. So if we want to move to this like new release docs channel, we would have to change those areas. So I guess I just wanted to get the team's opinion on what the SIG Docs release is used for. Because I know what release docs is used for.
Yeah, so just to back that up and give people a little more context, Anna. So in SIG release today, Tim Pepper very kindly pinned a message which outlines all the release related Slack channels. And when he did that, I noticed that he pinned for docs, release-docs, which I was unaware existed up until that moment, because SIG-release or SIG-docs-release is the one that we all typically use. So the question is, do we have a bit of overlap here, and how should we address that? Because too many channels, no good for the brain.
Yeah, actually for previous releases, I noticed that the lead will create a kind of DM for each of the shadows. So I was wondering if there is a better way to communicate to each others, because if, let's say, we are using DM, then it's kind of hard to track things, or any advice on that?
Yeah, so I actually talked to the leads a while back about this whole like channel DM versus an open channel. And I think what we're gonna do is actually communicate with the shadows through a public channel now. And if a DM is required, we will still use a DM for some private conversation, but we're trying to make everything as open as possible. So my what I was gonna do for this release is actually use one of those channels, either the release one or the SIG Docs release one, to communicate everything with the shadows.
Okay, so here's a question that is clarifying, perhaps. If you're planning to use either release-docs or SIG-docs that release, one of the two channels, if you're planning to use one of those for release communications and specifically communicating with the shadows, do you need a channel to communicate? I guess the question I'm asking is, do you need two channels? Do you need one channel specifically for talk amongst shadows and then one to sort of reach out to the docs community?
Yeah.
And if you need a channel to reach out to the docs community, my question is, how is that different than just reaching out to SIG Docs?
Yeah,
I don't think you need both channels, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because last release, I think we actually used the SIG Docs channel to ask everyone for PR reviews and stuff, right? So if that's still okay with the team, then I would just use one channel to communicate with the shadows, and then use SIG Docs to communicate any reviews or communicate with the SIG Docs team.
I think that sounds like the plan personally, but I want to hear what everybody else has to say.
I'm going to make a couple of points here. First of all, if you need to follow up and really sort of chase up that something hasn't been PR reviewed, there is the sort of, I wouldn't say nuclear option, but slightly stronger option of the PR reviews channel, which is fairly naggy. That is for like, processes have failed and, you know, we need to get a PR review to happen. So the PR reviews channel is for that purpose, and it is available for documentation as much as anything else. I think if you're using that, then something has gone wrong. If you're using that for documentation, then something has gone wrong here. But it exists. If you need to reach out to website contributors for the main English localization especially, then SIG Docs is the right channel. If you need to get, for example, you've got a pull request, which is LGTM, and you're really chasing up an approval to build on that LGTM, there is SIG Docs approvers. So that's a good choice if it's, you don't want the strong option. You just want to say this looks ready for approval. And now, as a release team, you can do your own approvals for the release branch, but it might be relevant for some changes. So that's like, generally, and that's what's in place outside of release. And then you have the two channels that you've mentioned. You've got release docs, which was new to me, and you've got SIG Docs release. And I guess this is more an opinion now rather than facts. It doesn't seem to me that you need a channel that has the release team and the shadows in it that's public, but you're using separately. One of those release channels would be the right place for any conversation that's, unless it needs to be in a DM because it's sensitive in some way, then I would put it in one of those channels once we pick one.
Yeah, I agree. If I had to give an opinion, I would say that you should go with release/docs because you are specifically talking about the release in that regards. And I think that belongs more in SIG releases wheelhouse than it does in SIG Docs, if that makes sense. Functionally, it's either or, but I have always questioned the presence of SIG Docs release, especially now that a second channel has appeared.
Okay. I mean, that sounds good to me. I think if we deprecate the channel, we just need to update the docs that has that referenced. So
you need to update the docs and talk to Stephen Augustus because he will know what YAML files you need to edit to actually formally archive the channel.
Okay, got it. I can do that.
So it sounds like we're reaching a consensus here. And it's on, Celeste is selecting release docs. Now, does anyone wish to put forward a conflicting suggestion, like propose keeping SIG Docs release as the main channel? Here's your opportunity. Okay, I think we're picking release docs. I'm going to put that in the agenda Google Doc. Okay. So that's with you, Anna. Anything else you want to talk about on the release? I haven't talked about the access control bit yet. Anything else you want?
Nope, that's it from me.
I suggest we park the access control and come back to it. The pull request about adding access.
Okay, is there a reason why?
Yeah, the next item is about chair transition. We might have more chairs on the call soon.
Oh, okay. Sure, we can park it.
So, chair transition. Zach becomes emeritus on September the 15th. Nominates Irvi to replace him. This is a bit of process.
Yeah, I think Zach is on leave right now, right? I mean, he is on holiday.
Sorry, who? Zach is on holiday, you're saying?
Yes, yeah. So there's no action item for this. And actually he asked if in advance contributing to become a chairs, it mentions that one should be at least one release lead, one-time release lead or two-time shadows for the docs. And he said he wants to discuss more about it later, but I'm not sure because he is still on vacations, and probably we will discuss it later when he back.
Okay.
Do you know what the issue he wanted to raise was?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what the issue he wanted to raise was, or?
I already knew about it. Actually, he mentions the advanced contributing rules about becoming a chairs.
I mean, is it we're just trying to get an exception, or we just? I guess it just needs more context, I guess. But
so okay, let me. I might just screen share for a moment. There's a bit of process. This isn't very exciting, but there is a bit of process, and I don't want to skip it and have to redo it because that's even more annoying. So when Zoom has woken up. Okay, so what I'm saying is I'm a bit puzzled because here I'm seeing that without further input, lazy consensus is to transition on September the 15th. And then there's a 3 tick box thing and only 2 of them are ticked. So I'm not sure we have lazy consensus. Unfortunately, Jim Angel, Ketan Barland and Zach are not on this call. So I'm happy to be the sort of interim chair and stepping up, but I don't know exactly what process to follow. Has anyone got any guidance?
It might be best to park this until we have.
I think we can discuss more about this after Zach is coming back.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the next step either.
I'll add a note to the issue. Okay, thanks for bearing with me on that, people. Let's go back to the access control question then, because I was hoping this would be a bit easier. But Anna, you've asked for access. I believe this also requires chair approval. I'm a tech lead, I'm not a chair. So I'm very happy to approve this. In fact, I'll add an LGTM, but I'm going to wait to get some approval before giving you that privileged access to the website repo.
Okay, sure, that works.
Okay. Sorry about the bureaucracy. These things are important, but also boring. Let's talk about pull requests and issues. Celeste.
Okay, so I'm going to go through these real quick because I think we've got some bigger talks coming up. So the first one is one of Tim's pull requests that's been sitting for a while. This is an implementation change in how we bring in the CNCF landscape on pages like the training and the partner pages. I've given it the looks good to me because it does look good to me, but I do need somebody who has a bit of web chops to give it the approve. It needs a second pair of eyes. That's all on that one. And as for the second pull request, I need help reviewing this. So the story is, as I was going through my large PR of removing extraneous files from the website over the past few months, one of the net results that came through was the case study pages are super tangly and super difficult to maintain and have a lot of custom CSS that doesn't need to be there. So I wrote a small issue on how we could potentially optimize those with the full intent that I was probably going to be the one who actually went ahead and implemented it. And then we got a lovely contributor who went ahead and implemented it for me, or solved some/all of these. This is a really big PR. I do not personally feel... Sorry, you're muted, Tim.
Good point. My buttons don't work when I'm screen sharing. 61 files changed. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a wonkin' big PR because it has to change files in almost all the case studies, specifically to remove things like custom CSS or inline CSS. This is a really big PR. I'm not sure I'm equipped to review this alone, and I would really appreciate a second pair of eyes on this because I have been afraid of reviewing it. And I think we also need to discuss whether the approach is the right approach or just in general. Long story short, please take a look at this. And that's all I really have to say. Thank you for sharing.
So, so on the second one, this one, improve maintainability of case studies. This is kind of like a call for advice and help, Celeste, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to that actually, because there is something we can do with the other pull request because we have a weekly meeting. I'm going to show a preview of it actually to people. So here is a preview of the page.
And also FYI, we went back to the first pull request, just so we're clear.
Oh yeah, this is so I've switched back to PR1 and no, I don't want that URL. I want I'm going to show the original, and I'm going to show the preview, deploy preview. Thanks everyone for bearing with me. Here's the original. Here is the deploy preview. They're slightly different because it was KubeCon when the deploy preview rendered. I'm going to ask the meeting, is everyone happy with me merging this? Because as an approver, I can merge it, and I'm happy for the meeting to be, this discussion right now, to be in a chance for someone to object. Any objections?
It looks like a good change to me. Self-merge, Tim, self-merge.
So what does the shortcut do, just curiously?
Sure, let me talk you through that.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Celeste.
Feel free to approve first and then tell me later.
So on the training and partners pages of kubernetes.io, we have this thing called the CNCF landscape. And this is it's like a small JavaScript application that somebody over in the CNCF developed, which pulls in filtered information about the different companies that do CNCF things. So on the partner page, it's who are our certified service provider partners that we're filtering for. On the training page, it's who have we certified as a training partner. And the way the original implementation works is it's very like copy and paste. And what Tim's change does is parameterize it a little bit so that when we're pulling into Hugo, we don't have to pull in the scripts every single time. We can just say, and now display a CNCF landscape with given these parameters. So it cleans up a little bit of our code, brings in a little less JavaScript.
Great.
You can see that we basically, there's the shortcut I had on screen, and now with a few bits of HTML5 data attributes, you drop the JavaScript and you put this in. And that's merged. Thanks very much. Thanks for bringing that up, Celeste. Let's talk about localization.
Great.
So I'm going to throw another tab over here. Okay, this is an issue from Joe Angel. I'm not sure who wants to talk about it, but I'm very happy to hear people's comments. Irvi, I know you are a localizer. Would you like to speak about this?
So this is related to the mission statement in the subgroup. I thought the solution to this was to create a subgroup to go drive all this.
Yeah, I think this is related to the subgroup formations, because the subgroup itself is like trying to create some kind of guidance for maintaining the existing localizations, right?
Yeah, I don't know who, this is on the agenda without a name, so would anyone like to claim this as their item?
So it's definitely related to the subgroup, because in previous meetings, this is what led to we should form a subgroup. So as far as I understand it, this was the idea that the different localization teams were starting to describe their processes in totally different places. And the goal of the subgroup, I believe, was to figure out how to be consistent in how the teams capture what their processes are, and for the maintaining of the localized documentation, and also as an opportunity to share across teams, say common tooling. So Irvi, does this make sense? I mean, that's how I viewed it. And if you read the comments, hopefully that will reinforce that.
Yes, that's also what I'm thinking about for these issues.
So yeah, there it is right there. Jim Angel, Zachary Saylor, maybe a subgroup would be better. So the action item previously was Zach had set up a Slack channel. It was a good day, and I voluntold myself to go ahead and be the subgroup chair because nobody else wanted it. I tried to put it on somebody else, and that didn't work. So I'm happy to lead it and drive it. And so the first thing I did is kind of in the next part of this was to put together a mission statement and see if everybody liked the mission statement, see if it captured what we thought the subgroup was going to do. And then if the mission statement is good, I think Irvi's going to help me to help pick a meeting time that works for people and get it calendared. And then I would be happy to drive the work. Irvi, does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think this is all related, Tim, if that with the mission statement. This issue is an open issue, and if you look at Jim's statement there, they agreed on a subgroup, and I raised my hand and said sure. So that's kind of why. Go ahead.
Thanks for that update, Brad. That's clarified what's going on. I've tidied the agenda up a bit. Mm-hmm. What do you need from today's meeting?
Just for people to look at the mission statement and say, yes, this is pretty much the scope of what we wanted the subgroup to be, or Brad, as usual, you missed the mark. Why weren't you paying attention? That's fine too. I know Irvi's reviewed it. But yeah, it was really the key was just to have, this was your chance to look at the mission of the subgroup and say, okay, that makes sense. That's what we were expecting. And then if that is okay, then, you know, Irvi and I will start trying to figure out how to get this organized and calendared and kicked off and talk to the localization teams. The question for me was, how much of this is, Irvi, everybody building their own localization document, putting in the same place, and how much of this is going to be, oh, could they all work together on a document that could be used across localization teams? I don't know how much of each there's going to be, right? So there's the potential for reuse and commonality and common tools. And so, for example, if one localization team came up with a great way to identify changes in documents, right, to say what to translate, we don't want all the localization teams to have to reinvent that wheel and build their own. So I think there was going to be a little bit of that in the subgroup. And then obviously the main issue that, you know, the localization contributing and maintaining guides that ideally will help the localization teams to create in a consistent fashion. Irvi, do you want to add to that? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, actually, the first concern for this subgroup is we know that there is several problems that can be found in several localization teams as well. But the thing is, how we address this kind of problems is like for each teams, they have their own way to solve these problems. Mm-hmm. However, there is some kind of pattern actually for these specific problems, for example. So I think we can kind of reuse the scripts or any tools that can be used for solving problems with specific patterns.
Yep.
I mean like common patterns, but if let's say the problem is really specific to the language itself, like then it's kind of difficult to use a common.
Sure.
Yes, common way of that.
Right. And the processes may be different too, right? The different localization team may have different processes for boarding, different processes for who gets to approve, and that would all be different as well.
Yes. And there is a question of, let's say that a member is actually inactive for a while. Mm-hmm. And you know that there will be huge loads on approver that still working on the things here, but I'm not sure on how the governance of this kind of things, if let's say the approval just somehow can be contacted, things like that, and then the loads just accumulated on one person or two person, things like that, and it will be kind of difficult to manage.
Right. And that too could be different per localization team, right? If you had a smaller team, you might want to allow your emeritus folks more approvals because you need the extra help. And other localization teams may be like, well, no, if you haven't been around for a while, well, no, you can't approve. Is that how you were, did that make sense that the different teams would have different policies for the emeritus people?
Yes.
Yep. So I think
so
the goal,
returning to the mission statement, mm-hmm. I've chucked in a suggestion there into the mission statement draft that Brad put in, specifically about reducing toil. Is that something you want to include, or is that too specific?
Might be a little too specific, or I'm a little worried if people the verb toil or the word toil, if that
no worries, dropped.
What's that? Okay.
So are people broadly happy with the draft that Brad's put forward, which is like bar one small change is as it was originally? Okay, thumbs up, thumbs down, people. Cool. Yeah, great. Thanks, Brad. That's done.
Okay. So next steps, Irvi, I'm going to work with you since you know a lot of the localization teams and a lot of experience, and hopefully together we can get this kicked off and find, I guess the challenge was, do we want to do like 2 meetings a month where one is got a time that's friendly to European and one that's got a time that's friendly to Asian. Luckily, I don't sleep much and I have horrible sleep habits. So I can actually, even though I'm Eastern Standard, I can do horribly difficult times pretty easily. Midnights and what have yous. So I think, Irvi, our next step is to try and figure that out, right? To just figure out who wants to participate in the subgroup and then to jointly try and figure out times that work for both of us. I obviously would love to have you there because of your experience, and it's going to be a huge help to the group, as much involvement as I can get from you.
Okay, sure. But the thing is, probably we can announce it in the Slack channel first and looks who the folks that will be interested in joining these subgroups as well.
Right, and so you were thinking just announcing it on SIG Docs and then also in all the localization channels, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and I can take ownership of doing that and announcing it and say we're looking for the people who are interested, and as we figure out who's interested, then we'll pick a time. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I'll take that action item and I'll start kicking that off. And thanks for everybody for looking at the mission statement and making sure it was in the ballpark of what we wanted to do.
Okay, thanks very much.
Sure.
That sounds really promising, and localization is really important. It's a key goal of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation to include people. Localization is a big part of that.
Yep.
So on to process. Public service announcement here. On the September the 27th, Zoom are rolling out a change to how groups are authenticated and rooms are authenticated. We, SIG Docs, will need to update the Zoom call that we use for the weekly meeting to add a password. We are using, don't tell anyone, it's very secret, 77777. 5 sevens. And we'll put this in Slack and so on. We've had very little Zoom bombing. We're not making these channels super public. And we'll revise that if there is a problem, but at the moment, that's what we're going to do. Also, please help out anyone that you see confused about the new passcode. Any questions? Okay, next item, KubeCon talks, etc. Irvi, you and I have said that we will do some talks for KubeCon.
Yes, exactly. How we will split the jobs then. We
I
haven't
have to
do
confess,
anything about this. Yeah.
I have to confess, I've not put any time into that so far. Do you have I don't know if you've made a start already.
No, I haven't done that because I'm still confused on what kind of talks that we will give to people here. So probably we can create a skeleton for this first, and then we can put any material that we want to bring up.
Okay, well, I guess action on me and Irvi to actually do something on this. I'm just making it visible that we haven't really.
So, Tim, is this different than where we get together, the thing that Zach sent out, or where 5 of us do like the new contributor day? Is this a different thing than that, or the same thing? So the thing I sent the chart deck for.
So this is about recording a video. Irvi, would you like to say more about it?
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat? I think
This is about recording a video, as I understand it.
Oh,
would you
okay.
like to say more about it, Irvi?
Not really. Oh yeah, I have questions about Celeste's ideas of getting 101 introductions about technical writings. So do we want to put that in the session as well?
Sorry, could you ask him? There's knife sharpening happening in the background and I actually can't hear.
That's very unnerving.
I mean, yeah, my mom can kick your butt.
Okay, so my question is, do we still plan to put the introductions on technical writing on the session as well?
The answer to that is if you'd like it, then I would happily be able to give some time to that and to do that. What's the plan for our time slot so far, guys?
Yeah, Tim, that because
I
I'm
lost
not
you.
really sure
Avi,
about the
please say
time
again.
slot that we have.
I mean, is this the one where we have like a half-day session? I guess that's what was kind of my question. I didn't know if you were doing a separate talk or you were doing the things we typically do at the conference, which is like a half-day session where we do an introduction to Kubernetes. Introduction to the docs rather, and how to be a contributor. And then Celeste was going to talk about we were going to sneak in some how to be a technical writer. We were going to make that part of the agenda. Are we all talking about the same thing or a different thing? I'm just kind of confused.
Me too. Me too. And I wonder if that's the key thing that we actually need to figure out right now. Okay, so we have a time slot at KubeCon.
I think I've signed up to do several different things. One of it, which is the time slot at KubeCon, and I need to check what I've signed up for because I think I've signed up for 2 related things.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry for the confusion, people.
Okay. Do you maybe want to loop us back in on Slack when you figure that out? Because this feels like a discussion that we can figure out asynchronously, and I don't think we have enough clarity to do anything right now other than get confused.
Let's move on to kubernetes.dev. Celeste.
Hi, so kubernetes.dev exists. The SIG Contribex kind of stood up a site that should, in theory, be the portal to all things contributor for Kubernetes. And there is a question around how we want to link and integrate this in with the main kubernetes.io site. The main question I have is from SIG Contribex's perspective. It would be an outright replacement of kubernetes.io/community. And are we okay with that? Nobody's touched that page for a while now, so.
I think we should split this into 2 questions, a few different questions, and then try and answer those.
Okay.
One question is, are we maintaining the existing community page well? That's one question. I'm going to put these in the chat, actually.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pull up our commit history on that page.
No, I'll put them in the agenda.
By the way, if we split this to things like kubernetes.dev and the community page, then we will maintain this kubernetes.dev website.
Yeah, so I think, okay, so just to before I answer or address your V's question, it does not look like this site has been, or this page has been meaningfully updated since I want to say before we converted to Hugo. There's been minor updates through 2018 and 2019, but they're like fixed capitalization level minor updates. So I think the answer of are we meaningfully maintaining this is no.
Well, can I chip in there though, Celeste?
Sure.
It is slightly a data-driven page.
Yeah.
And I think the data driving is broken, but the intention was that it would be driven by Twitter, by calendars, by YouTube and so on. And therefore, the updates don't show in the commit history.
True. Okay. That's very true.
So I know KubeCons aren't showing up on there, and they should be.
Yeah. But I still kind of doubt. I think the thing that would be most meaningfully missing that wouldn't eventually find its home in Kubernetes.dev, because I know that they have a new meetups calendar, they have a new events/community community meetings calendar. I imagine they've got like the GitHub link is literally just a link to Kubernetes. And I know that they're trying to de-emphasize Stack Overflow because nobody involved in the project truly takes ownership of Stack Overflow. So I think the thing that would be meaningfully missing there is a link to the code of conduct if we were to do an outright replacement. But I think talking to Bob Killen, who was the one who stood up Kubernetes.dev, his vision is that it would replace this page wholesale and we would just change out the link, which I think there's more meaningful content over there. So I don't think that's a bad idea. Moreover, it's how I'm not a fan of like spinning up separate sites for every little hope and dream. In this case, I think it might make sense. I'm not a fan of their domain name because I think it's confusing for somebody who isn't a contributor to know which one's the docs and which one's this contributor site. Like, I think that was a really bad move, and I wish they would have consulted us. And I think that if we have two kind of large web presences, now it becomes a question of what is the Kubernetes website maintenance group rather than the docs maintenance versus the community maintenance. Like, I think we need to be a bit more like that, specifically for web maintenance stuff. There's a lot to talk about here. It's not as simple as just the link, I think.
Well, we've got 15 minutes. I actually thought we'd get through this before the hour was up, but I think this is important to talk about, and we may need to come back to it at a future weekly meeting.
Yeah.
So we've got a point from Celeste. Irvi, you asked a question, and then I didn't capture it. So please, if you've got access to the agenda, type it in again. I'm very sorry that I missed it.
Okay, so I'm asking about the maintenance of the website, the new website of Kubernetes.dev. Who will maintain it? And because I know that we have two separate websites, and the maintenance will kind of need to be taken care of, sort of.
Yeah. My understanding is that SIG Contribex will ensure the freshness of that content. It's Contribex content. What concerns me is the website maintenance aspect of it, because I know like Hugo and Doxy are not Bob Killen's kind of bread and butter. So that's what concerns me about that website. Is the actual website.
So I think this is a different point on a spectrum. So what we've got, I guess, we've got special interest groups that engage sort of with SIG Docs, but leave content maintenance to us a lot. So most of the technical SIGs are kind of, this is going to sound a bit brutal, but I'm going to say that, you do get features that land as GA, and then we mention, oh, can we have some documentation for this? And it's a bit of a surprise for the special interest group that this is a thing that you need to do. That happens. Some SIGs are really proactive at adding documentation, like Cluster Lifecycle really engages with SIG Docs and sort of takes ownership of technical reviews for their content. And then I see this as Contribex being a different point on the spectrum where they're actually they're owning it strongly, but we've not been involved. So it's a different point on the spectrum. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I would say so. They are in general very good about maintaining their content, and this is an exercise in making sure that everything's not in a Git repo, because that's not super beginner friendly.
Cool. So I want to walk through the questions that are up there now. We've got a set of questions. Let's try and come up with as many answers as we can in the time we've got. I especially want to hear from people. Celeste, you've made some good points. I want to hear from some other voices. Are we maintaining the existing community page well? Any opinions on that people want to mention?
Or is it possible to just redirect this community page to the new website?
Well, I think that's a different question. It's a valid question, but this page, are we maintaining it well? Do people want to say that it's, you know, it's valid, it's stale, what? Okay. I think Celeste's point is that it is not very well maintained. It's been allowed to rot, and I think that, to me, that also seems like an accurate conclusion. Next question, this one's for me as well. Does the community page serve more than developers? I've put some comments about this on related issues and PRs. Again, I'd like to hear some different views. Adam, you looked about to speak.
It's one of those, it's very hard to judge if it's serving more than developers as a developer myself. I'm trying to picture, like the end user, what this, if it jumps out, or if it's something that feels more like this is just, the audience seems geared more towards developers, at least the existing site.
Is there anyone on this call who's got, particularly strong ties, or feels like got particularly strong ties to Kubernetes end users or end user community, and would like to speak about that? Does this page serve end users? Brad, maybe you've got some views? If you do, Brad, you're muted.
I'm so sorry, I was muted. I don't know how many end users are hitting it, and I don't know if that's because the content is out of date or they just go to the regular docs. That's what I'm struggling with, and I'm not sure I have specific data points either way. Celeste, does that make sense? That's kind of my concern.
So what worries me about redirecting community to kubernetes.dev is, where do we put links to meetups? Where do we say, here is a conference that you can go to if all you want to do is meet other people who use Kubernetes and have never committed a line of code to it? How do you find your fellow users and take part in that thing?
So I think you're saying that would be the home for it, is what you're saying. The Kubernetes.dev, from the doc point of view, you're saying we ought to do more to exploit using that to create our virtual community of people, our outreach programs for docs.
I guess I think, although we're SIG Docs, this is the whole website we look after. And, there is a sort of community outreach activity. It's not quite contributor experience, because not all the community is contributing. It's not documentation, because this isn't about documentation. Maybe there's I don't know all the SIGs. Maybe there's a SIG or an activity that is more about that kind of community outreach that I'm not aware of.
Well, that, if anything, seems more like a CNCF thing, and it would be under Cheryl Hung, who's doing, I think, end user community. Basically was her mandate for hire. But I haven't reached out to her, so I'm not quite sure.
Would you be willing to reach out to Cheryl?
Yeah, I can reach out. I think that's, at this level, that's appropriate, and I'm the appropriate person to do it. I think your concern is valid, Tim, about, for example, Kubernetes community stuff that is not necessarily the contributor community. So kind of driving back to the practical, what are we going to do with this new site question? I'm going to preempt the question of let's add another link to the top nav, because that's going to be the obvious question, by saying that the top nav is a limited resource. And we
can actually, there's a couple more questions, one from Irvi that
of course, I'm sorry, yeah.
I want to get through. So one's from you. How do we hyperlink to the code of conduct? It's a very technical question. You might have a really quick opinion on that?
Yeah, dot. Now, the other half of that is, I believe Contribex are the formal owners of the code of conduct. Don't quote me on that.
I guess the code of conduct doesn't have to live on the main website at all, so long as it's very available.
It just needs to be very available. It doesn't need to live under a community. In fact, it may be mishomed under community as it is currently.
What I would say, and actually we don't localize it, like the localizations live upstream. So we don't even have to worry about localizing it. Fantastic. Irvi, your question. How is the new Kubernetes.dev maintained?
Yes, this is actually still related to what kind of purpose that we want to serve by using this new website. So if, let's say we don't, I mean, like, how is the ownership of this website? I think it should be Contrib-X, right? But there is several things that still attach in the documentations part, like code of conduct and stuff. So how we will maintain that kind of things, because seems like there's two different websites with different purpose, yet there is still overlapping components on both websites.
You're muted, Tim.
Thank you, Anna. Every time I screen share. More thoughts, please, from people.
I don't think this is a conversation that we can answer, isn't it? Like, don't we have to talk to the contribute? I'm sorry, I forget the name. They're SIG, who maintains this website.
SIG contributor experience.
Contributor experience, yes. I don't know if that's like something that like people from here need to attend their meeting, or like we can ask them to join our meeting, or if there's a meeting somewhere that people can just talk, I guess. I don't know. I think that's a good solution, just to talk about all the concerns that Arby and Celeste brought up.
Or perhaps just reaching them out in the Slack channel.
Yeah.
So people on this call, I'm going to say that I'm afraid at the moment I haven't really got the cycles to do that, reaching out to Contrib-X. It sounds really valuable. Would anyone feel that they're comfortable, or maybe they've got a contact with Contrib-X already, feel comfortable being a bridge between the two SIGs?
I'll do it. I'm going to reach out to Cheryl anyways, so it'll just be triangulating what we need to do with all this information. So I'll do it, and I will hopefully have updates before the next meeting.
Thank you very much for that, Celeste. That sounds really useful. Liaise with SIG. Actually, and I'll put my name on the other. And I think one question that we should, is really a question that maybe you'll take to that discussion, Celeste, is how does this fit in with the contribute page that we have specifically about documentation?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think at least from my perspective right now, but perhaps I will change my mind, is each SIG owns its own contribution guidelines. So I think it falls under that. These are Kubernetes docs contribution guidelines, and we own them and can disperse them however we please. I know. I know, and I raised this issue when they when they launched their website. I was like, okay, cool, we're gonna give people two different ways of kind of becoming a first contributor. But I think that particularly for SIG docs as well, our first steps are slightly different than most other SIGs because we aren't taking code contributions, we're taking docs contributions. The editing and approval process is a bit different. So I think we have to maintain a little bit of separation.
I guess I'll relate some of my experience, which was when I noticed this website. I saw, like this is a little bit like a bias. So there's a contribute section right in the website to the docs, not contribute to like the kubelet or whatever or the CLI. And I thought I know what's happened there. Like the docs SIG owns this page, so it tells you how to contribute to docs. So I think actually this new site is going to help address that balance, where at the moment new contributors are driven to contribute to the docs rather than there are many places where people contribute. So I think this is a positive thing. That's my view. No,
I agree. I think it's a positive thing as well. But again, I think SIG docs we're always a bit different than a lot of the other SIGs because we aren't necessarily a code SIG. TLDR, pause and let me foment that opinion a bit further.
So with 1 minute 45 seconds of time remaining, does anyone wish to talk about anything else this week?
I have one thing. So I missed like last week's meeting and the few weeks before that, and I was actually looking forward to catching up on the discussion, but I wasn't able to find it on YouTube. And I was just wondering if people are aware that meetings are not being uploaded. And I think we should fix that. It's a problem.
That is a good question, Anna. And with 60 seconds left, I'm going to say well raised, and I don't think we have an answer.
Okay.
I will post that in Slack as well as a question for the chairs and tech leads to pick up and sort out.
Great.
Any more points? There's something in the chat. Let me just check. Oh, hello, RGHAV. Who's that? Welcome to SIG Docs. And that's a SIG meeting, people. Goodbye, all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.